Right. Good morning to members, officers, press and public attending the corporate parenting panel. I'm Councillor Stephen Rowe and I'm chairman for the panel. Councillor Cleon. Hi. Cleo Perrington-Williams, vice chairman of the panel. He's also in attendance. Before we move on with the main business of this meeting, can I remind you that the audio-visual feed of this formal public meeting is being broadcast live via the Council's website, and with this in mind I would like to welcome members of the public watching this live. I would like to begin with a health and safety announcement. There is no fire drill planned this morning. In the event of the fire alarm sounding, we need to leave the council chamber through the rear doors and leave the building through the reception into the front car park. We then need to wait in the car park until further instructions. Could I also ask you to switch off your mobiles or to turn down your mobiles and laptops and iPads, please, for the duration of the meeting. If you wish to ask a question or make a statement in the course of the meeting, can you please raise your hand? Can I also remind members of the panel to switch on their microphones when invited to speak? To speak close to the microphone and to switch their microphone off after you make your contributions. Request to speak will be collated by the Vice Chairman. Please can you keep your questions and contributions succinct and concise. We will now move on to the formal agenda. Apologies, please.
Thank you, Chairman. We've received apologies from Councillors Whittington, Cook and Higgs and Polly Coombs and Anne Wright.
Thank you. Item 2 is declarations of members' interest. Does any members have anything to declare? Obviously, you can pull it up later on if there's something you notice as we go through. Item 3, minutes of the meeting of the panel on the 10th of November 2022. This item is to confirm the minutes of our previous meeting, which can be found on pages 5 to 10 of the agenda pack as a correct record. I propose that they are correct record. Could I have a seconder, please? Anybody else here? Thank you, Colin. We'll now take a vote on that, please, whether you agree the minutes are correct. You can actually vote even if you weren't here, as long as you're happy that it was correct. Okay, thank you. That was unanimous. These minutes are agreed as correct and accurate record. Announcements. We have a long agenda this morning, so I'd ask officers to summarise the key points of their reports to allow for more time for questions and debating. We have our first corporate parenting engagement session, Andy Morris and myself, at Boston this evening. No, it is this evening. I'm pleased I mentioned that. See you later, Andy. I've got no executive council announcements. Tara, Interim Assistant Director, Children's Safeguarding, anything you wish to mention?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Item 5 is the Commissioning Excellence Meeting the Sufficiency Duty 2018-22 Annual Update and Timeline for the 23-27 Strategy. This item is on pages 11 to 46 of the agenda pack and introduces the annual update to the action plan of the Looked After Children Placement Sufficiency Strategy. This will be presented by Bridie Fletcher, Senior Commissioning Officer, Children's Strategic Admission. The panel is invited to consider and comment on the contents of this report and endorse the updated action plan for the Sufficiency Strategy 2018-22 and receive the presentation of Children in Care Sufficiency Strategy 2023-27. And we'll obviously take questions at the end. Thank you.
Okay, I think I'm on. I am. Good morning. Okay, so this is to do with the update to the action plan for the current strategy. This is the last update to the current strategy that will ended 2022. So the action plan update covers the period up until December 22, and this is the report that's been presented today. The other element to the cover report is to look at the next plan for the subsequent strategy, which will cover the period 2023 to 27, and it had been previously agreed that strategy would run from April 23 through. So the proposal will be that we will bring the new strategy with the planned action plan to the corporate parenting panel in May, and then subsequent years the action plan update is likely to need to come in the July meeting, so that officers will have time to complete the returns and the update towards the end of the financial year, so that we've got time to complete the action plan and then bring it to July meeting. So hopefully that will work for corporate parenting in terms of oversight of the next sufficiency strategy. In terms of the action plan update, that's been attached following the cover report. It contains lots of updates from officers, so we will obviously be able to answer some questions, but some of those comments are from officers such as Andy Cook, or who might not actually be here today, so we'll do our best. In terms of key items, we've got the family hub work, which is ongoing and will be commissioned for 2023. So that's all very exciting, and that's moving forward positively. Future for Me is ongoing and has had turnaround funding from the Ministry of Justice, and is under continual evaluation about the success of the project, and it is successful, and that's highlighted quite clearly in the report. A lot of the report covers items around accommodation and sufficiency, as you would expect, it being a sufficiency strategy. There are items in there that cover things like rent gaps for some of our supported accommodation young people. We've got funding from what was the Ministry for Levelling Up. I think they might have changed their name, not sure, but that's within NACRO, and that's the Homelessness Prevention Project, and that's doing exceptionally positive work. Coming up, we've got challenges which we that might impact the supported accommodation sector, because Ofsted regulation is coming in this year. The application process for registration is believed to be starting in April, and indications are that Ofsted and the DfE are hoping to have everybody submitted an application by November, and then the council will need to make sure that we're only using suppliers that have submitted an application from then on in to remain compliant. So we've got some additional work to do with the sector this coming year. We are looking at a bid to DfE around staying close, staying connected at the moment, which we think will enhance the offer and move on options and ongoing support to young people that have experienced residential care. So that's just started, and we're hopeful that we can get a bid in place. We're looking at timelines, they've yet to be fully confirmed, but we've started doing some work on that. In terms of support to foster care recruitment and residential staff, there's lots of things going on around evaluations, the Value in Care Toolkit, recruitment for homes managers, which are needed for the new 2 residential homes. But there's lots of positive work around CAMS training and feedback from peers around the support to both the staff in those residential homes and our foster carers. So there's a lot of positive work going on there. In terms of other accommodation and support to the sector, we've obviously got a high number of young people supported through our leaving care service to remain in suitable accommodation. So that's about 95% over the past 12 months, which is above contract KPIs. That contract is moving forward. It's just been extended with Barnardo's, so we have that now in place until 2025. but there will be a service review inevitably coming up within the next 12 months to consider future options. In terms of youth housing itself, that is a really strong contract and is delivering exceptional work for our young people. There are 72 beds within the county and 3 hub sites, and that's where the homelessness prevention project is located, that's funded from the Ministry for Health, Levelling Up, whatever they're called, sorry. Andy, as a corporate parenting manager, has also done some extra work around rent gaps and underwriting tenancies for some of our 16, 17-year-olds that would otherwise experience difficulties in sustaining tenancies, or for whom supported accommodation just isn't working, and there's been some really positive outcomes with that. So that's something to consider, maybe on an exception basis going forwards, given the success of that so far. In terms of placements, we've recommissioned on a new procurement cycle the open select list, and we now have 7 strands through our placements and brokerage team. And the closed ordered list for unaccompanied asylum seeking children was also recommissioned last year, and that's also now into a new 5-year cycle. So that supports sustainability and sufficiency there. In terms of the strategic commissioning team and our placements management, we're looking at things through the placements management meeting, which considers sufficiency, placement planning, high cost placements, in order to make sure that we're looking at how to best meet needs for our young people and try to bring them back into Lincolnshire through the KIC transformation programme, which itself is linked to value in care. It's all wrapped in together, and the aim is to try to support our young people better and bring them home wherever possible, or keep them at home wherever possible. So we're looking at ways of working with the market, looking at ways of developing relationships with our suppliers, and we've done a lot of work in 2022 through the placement commissioning team, through, sorry, I've run out of words briefly, through a placement management meeting, through strategic management. So I think that's another piece of work going forward that will continue over the next at least 12 months. Other support services have also been recommissioned, so we're looking at mental health and the emotional wellbeing service. They've developed a Here For You access team that started January last year, so that's also really positive around additional support to our young people. That their mental health also impacts on tenancies and sufficiency of placement, so that's all really positive. And I don't think I have an awful lot else for you, Councillor Rowe, unless you wanted to ask any further questions.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any questions? No? Councillor? Yeah.
So I've just got one question. I noticed on the page 35, action point number 25, it says a wider review of children's mental health services is being planned post-pandemic in 2022. Which will form the basis of a longer-term transformation plan. I'm assuming it's moving to 2023, or you want to just take that bit out, or just wondered what was going on?
Sorry, I couldn't get my mic to come on. Yeah, obviously this will have been compiled at the end of last year when that was all going on, and I think that will have been completed now and will feed into the next stage of the plan.
Do we have any other questions? Okay, so thank you very much. Obviously very comprehensive. The proposal is that the panel receives and endorses the report, that we are satisfied with the updated action plan for the sufficiency strategy 2018-2022. I also request that our comment on the 23-27 strategy are taken under consideration and captured. Can I ask you to raise your hands if you're in agreement, please? Thank you, that's unanimous. So thank you both very much again. So we move on to item 6, Lincolnshire County Council Virtual School Annual Report, Academic Year 2021-2022. This item on pages 47 to 92 of the pack provides the panel with an update on the work of the virtual school head to support the promotion of educational outcomes for children and young people in care for the academic year 1st of September 2021 to the 31st of August 2022. This report will be presented by Sarah Lane, Interim Virtual School Head. I would like to welcome Sarah and wish Kieran Barnes, the former head of the virtual school, a happy retirement and thank him for his support throughout the past years. Over my 2 years nearly here, he's almost been ever present and contributed a lot to the actions. So I appreciate he's not come today, but very much want to pass on my personal thanks to him as well. So welcome, Sarah. It's all yours.
Thank you. A hard act to follow, I feel, but I'll do my very best. So the report, as you mentioned, covers the academic year from 2021 to 2022. And just to put a little bit of context around that academic year, this is the first full academic year that children are back in school and have been unaffected by national lockdowns following the pandemic. And so there's been a significant period of readjustment for all children, particularly our children in care, but also for schools as well. It was the first year of Key Stage 4 examinations, so children were actually sitting their exams rather than the 2 years of teacher assessments that had taken place previously. During this academic year, schools were very much still in the process of assessing, identifying and filling the gaps in learning that had resulted across all children following the home learning periods during the national lockdowns. The government have supported this with a COVID recovery plan, so there has been more funding going into schools in the form of recovery premium and school-led tuition grants, and the virtual school has been responsible for the distribution and allocation of that specifically for our children in care. There's been a new early years foundation stage framework for our 0 to 5-year-olds, which you'll see from the report has made it very difficult to compare outcomes to previous years. And Ofsted also restarted their face-to-face inspections at the start of this academic year. And I think it's important to note that within the national context of workforce recruitment and retention, schools have been struggling to maintain periods of stability with staffing, illness and also recruitment issues. But I'm very proud to say we've had a very stable and resilient virtual school team, no vacancies, no changes of staff. And they've continued to work really hard with professionals and education settings to make sure every single one of our young people in care has had a high quality PEP, and that's been reviewed termly. And during this academic year, there was the greater focus on a return to face-to-face meetings alongside the hybrid offer that took place during the pandemic. It's important to note that the characteristics of the cohort for this academic year, we had an increase in the number of children in care to previous years, and included an increase in the number of unaccompanied asylum-seeking young people that we also support. And we had a higher proportion of children who were identified as having special educational needs. And those children are either being supported through the graduated approach of the SEND Code of Practice, which is either SEN support or with an EHC plan. So the key headlines from the report, the virtual school has rolled out a new training programme for new and experienced designated teachers. This incorporates the Caring to Learn training offer as well, and has been well received. It provides a variety of e-learning and face-to-face training opportunities, and as I say, will cover those staff who are new to the role of designated teacher, but also build on the knowledge of those that have been in the post for some time. We've continued to work in partnership with our children's services colleagues and education settings to raise aspirations for our children in care and to look at how we can remove any potential barriers to them accessing and making progress in their education. We've continued to provide ongoing support, particularly to foster carers and residential homes through the Caring to Learn offer. And we're pleased that the majority of our young people are attending good or outstanding settings, and very much one of the key aims working with our colleagues in social care is to try and maintain stability in their school placement. The additional funding to schools has been effectively distributed. As I mentioned before, that includes the new recovery premium and school-led tutoring grant, and we've used the PEP process to identify if the young people are on target to achieve their predicted outcomes, and if not, what interventions and support can be put in place to help them to make progress. We've got an ongoing commitment to early intervention, and we continue to work with the specialist teaching team. So all children that are new into care, aged 3 to 13, will have a baseline assessment to identify if there's any underlying areas of need that will need particular support, and to help schools and settings set accurate targets. We also work very closely with our early years specialist teachers who carry out termly communication and language assessments for our 2 to 3-year-old children in care, recognising the importance of communication and language across life and also the school curriculum, and that allows the early year settings to put specific targets in place to promote the young people's development. During this year, we took part in the DFRE Post-16 Pupil Premium Pilot, and I believe we're presenting another paper at the next meeting to talk about the impact of that. But that pilot did allow that year to have additional funding to support our young people to access and sustain engagement and make progress in employment, education and training opportunities. With regards to the specific cohorts, you'll see from the data that's been provided, our Key Stage 2 cohort made progress that's likely to be above or similar to the national and regional comparators, and that is very much a positive impact. I think of attendance during lockdown, because we had a good proportion of our children in care who continued to attend school during the pandemic, and also the interventions that have been put in place. Key Stage 4 progress is comparable to pre-pandemic levels. The young people, as you'll see from the report, the Key Stage 4 cohort, we had a significantly higher number of young people in special schools this year, fewer children in mainstream schools, which has impacted on outcomes. And also the report celebrates many of the individual achievements of our young people, both in school but also in out-of-school activities. You'll see from the report that we've been unable to include the data on attendance, as national and regional data is not published until in March. So there is a proposal that we present an additional report on the attendance of our children at the planned meeting in May. So happy to take any questions anybody may have.
Thank you very much. The actions are that the panel is invited to consider the report, Virtual School Annual Report 2021-2022, and endorse the recommendations for the academic year 2022-2023. Do we have any questions? Councillor Matthews.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Well done. It appears we're leading the world in running virtual schools, and everybody is following our lead. Disappointing, therefore, that results have gone down. I've got two technical questions. Structure of the virtual school, clearly it's out of date if Kieran has resigned, and very sad. Well, pleased for him, I guess. Congratulations, and thank you for all his hard work. There's a considerable number of people on that sort of tree there. Are they all fully employed, being virtual school workers?
Yeah, so the structure chart, the coordinators, so that bottom row plus the education progress leads, they are the staff who are actually going out into the settings, who are working with the young people, who are organising the PEP meetings and really advocating for those young people. And due to the numbers in care, each of those coordinators have had caseloads of around 60 to 70 young people. So there's quite significant caseloads that have obviously increased as the number of young people in care have increased. With regards to some of the staff are office staff, so you've got your EPEP development officer who was Pat Rushby at the time of the report that was written, and she's responsible for overseeing the development of the PEP process and to support with the financial distribution of the pupil premium to settings to make sure that the schools and settings are getting the funding as quickly as possible and as efficiently as possible. The two 0.4 posts Let me just find the actual titles of the staff just to help you. So it's Lee Brooks and Jen Dunning, the academic progress leads. They are only employed, both of those are on a 0.4 full-time equivalent basis. Jen is also based in the specialist teaching team for part of her role, and Lee is part of our performance team, and they're very much not working directly with young people, but they are analysing the data and looking at the impact of interventions and considering what interventions need to be put in place across cohorts to promote progress. I think that's all of them. We currently obviously don't have a team manager because I've stepped up as interim, and this was the structure of the virtual school at the time the report was written, which was in December.
That's good. There are many primary schools and in Lincolnshire would be very pleased to have that sort of staffing ratio. So well done. And I guess we'll look for the outcomes to be getting better and better and better, because we're throwing a lot of asset at it, aren't we? My second question was about home tuition. Are children in care entitled to sort of be elected into home education?
Electively home educated, we normally encourage, when children come into care, we have some children who have been electively home educated, and we do have a team within the local authority who monitor the quality of that home education. And the young people who have come into care have been deemed to not have appropriate home education. So when those young people have come into care and they have moved to foster placements, we've worked really hard with social care colleagues to enable those young people to start attending school. So we aim to get all of our children on a school roll. Some of those young people need a very phased transition because they may have been out of school for 1 or 2 years, pending what's been happening as they before they came into care. So we expect all our children in care to be on a school roll, but we do look at additional home tuition as a top-up for young people who may need extra support. The school-led tutoring grant I made reference to allows the schools to put extra support in for young people outside of the normal routine of the day. But where there are individual young people that we feel would benefit from home tuition, we will work with social care, with the educational settings, and also with the home tuition team, the SEND tuition team, plus the foster carers to make sure that's happening. For some of our young people, they may be, because I mentioned we like to keep stability in school placement, for some of our young people, they may be having a significant journey to and from school, and expecting them to come home at 5 o'clock and then start on home tuition is not appropriate for all young people. So we have the ability to put in some additional tuition to support what's happening in school, but very much that's on an individual basis, looking at the child, their circumstances, and what the school is already offering.
And so you've got a team of 15, and then you have additional tuition being provided by the schools and home support being provided for another resource. So we're throwing quite a lot at this cohort, aren't we? Why can't we do elective home tuition with this quality of team and the quality of work we're doing and the quality of materials you're producing, rather than not attend schools? Why can't they be electively home educated using our resources?
The majority of our children are attending schools. The team are not qualified tutors. The virtual school coordinators come from a varied background, and their role is not to work directly in educating the young people. Their role is very much to advocate and support the PEP process and to remove barriers. And we very much rely and work very closely with our social care colleagues in making sure that children are accessing school and attending school, which is our priority for all of our children. And we are not qualified to actually deliver hands-on tuition.
Okay, Cleo.
I was just wondering anecdotally whether you've had more take-up of the online aspect of it now that they can see you face to face as well. I just wondered what the preference was.
Yeah, there is a national shortage of tutors, and schools are struggling to recruit tutors. Some of our young people will participate in online activities educationally. A lot of our young people don't find it beneficial, but the SEND tuition team that we do commission to provide tuition have provided Zoom-based tuition. So it's face-to-face but virtually rather than an online package. Again, some young people will respond well to that. Some young people don't like to engage in that, and so we've looked at face-to-face tuition where appropriate. But it is something that schools are exploring more and more because of the shortage of tutors to provide some catch-up packages. So it is something that we're constantly looking at, but it's making sure that the quality is there and there's a robustness because of the vulnerabilities of our young people. So.
Okay, just a couple of questions from me. More about the unaccompanied asylum seekers. Obviously, one of the challenges is going to be language, but I was just wondering if we've identified other challenges and what we've had to do to accommodate what's required. Plus, I sat listening to the radio the other day and they were talking about some of these young people being moved around the country. I was just wondering how stable sort of our cohort, as you might say, is, please.
From the US perspective, we're very well supported. As you know, a lot of our young people who come in aged 16 plus go to locate accommodation in Peterborough. And so from an educational perspective, we're really well supported by Peterborough College, who have an ESOL provision. And there is also a training provider that we have historically used, but there has been some concerns about the quality of their ESOL provision. We'll be able to touch more on that in the next report because the post-16 pupil premium funding has helped to strengthen the Peterborough College offer. So from an educational perspective in Peterborough, the young people's needs are well met, apart from now the increasing number of young people that local education provision is getting saturated and there's very little movement. But we've come up with a solution with locate accommodation through the use of providing ESOL provision as an interim arrangement until the young people can get on a college course. For the young people who are UASCs who are under the age of 16, they're often placed with foster families that are outside of Lincolnshire, and there is a challenge because some of these young people are still statutory school aged, and we have to find a mainstream secondary school. So some of these young people who are coming into the country with no English expected to then go into year 11 of a secondary school. But we have had significant success in approaching schools and with the right package of support, enabling all our young people. So we're moving towards most of our unaccompanied asylum seeking young people aged 16 to 18 accessing, well, before 16 to 18, accessing education. So that is a real strength. And I think the use of the post-16 pupil premium has also provided some booster sessions, which has enabled the progress to accelerate so that the young people can make quicker progress through their ESOL provision. So by the time the virtual school end their involvement, which is at 18, most of them are still working their way through ESOL provision to get appropriate levels to then go on to more mainstream college courses. And with regards to the stability of cohort, I think obviously there are some situations where our young people have placement breakdowns and have to be moved out of Lincolnshire. Wherever possible, we'll work with the social worker and school transport team to, if it's feasible for that young person to continue to attend the school that they were at. But obviously, if they move out of county, one of our key roles is helping the social worker and the carers identify the most appropriate good or outstanding school and ensuring that they get a place offered as soon as possible through that local authority school admissions process. We will look at putting some interim tuition in place if that's needed and if we're able to source that. I think one of the key issues, and this is a national issue, is the availability of special school places. So for young people with education, health and care plans, there is often a longer period of time in identifying appropriate schools if that young person moves outside of Lincolnshire. But again, we work very closely with our own SEND team and we make sure that there is some interim tuition in place so that the young person can continue to access education until we can get them a school place.
So if these children move out of county, as with our other children, they stay our responsibility wherever they happen to go until they leave education as such?
Absolutely. And the young people who have education, health and care plans, if they are resident in Lincolnshire, then Lincolnshire send a responsible for the EHC plan. But if these young people move out of county, their EHC plan will transfer to another local authority. So we remain responsible for them as a child in care, and it's Lincolnshire Virtual School that will be supporting them, but we're then working with the other local authority send team to identify provision for them.
Great, thank you very much. Councillor Keeley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Councillor O. When you mention appropriate packages of support, can you just give a little bit more detail by what you mean by that?
For children in
yes,
school?
because obviously, I mean, I don't know. Do you ever, you must meet some resistance by some children, or don't you, about education and learning?
Yeah, and I think once our children are in school, very much we're working with the school to look at what the school can offer. So our role is to try and help the school identify any particular barriers, and then looking at what the school can offer to meet those areas, or if there is anything extra over and above. So for example, the specialist teachers assessment, we're commissioning that, we're paying for that, but it is taking place in the school. It's helping the school identify if there are any particular gaps that need addressing in that child's cognition and learning, and then they will make suggestions of how that can be done. So additional support packages may be, for example, extra support from teaching assistants in sessions, which the school may use pupil premium, and we will allocate the pupil premium to fund that. It may be access to friendship groups if they've got difficulties with their peer relationships. It may be some intensive support if they've got identified concerns around their emotional well-being. It's looking at what the school can offer, because that's that young person's safe base, and that's where the familiar relationships are, and encouraging the school to look at how they can broaden their provision, that we would then offer the pupil premium to cover, rather than us identifying people to go into the school and work with a young person, if that makes sense.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Matthews.
I think people will know that I love a graph. And I'm looking at the Key Stage 4 outcomes 2017 to 2022. And I'm intrigued by two things. The first is that there's no entry for National and East Midlands on the 22 figures. So it's not possible to compare the Lincolnshire performance, but the Lincolnshire performance in English and maths for 9 to 5s dropped from 21% to 9%. And for the other group, 9.4s, I think 5% to 4%. And as you look at that graph, it's pretty shocking. So my first question is that matched by national comparators and by East Mids comparators? And if so, why are they not shown on there? And if it's not matched, can you explain why we were going along really nicely? Everything was getting hunky-dory, even in those disastrous years of COVID. And then suddenly in this year, we're back to normal. That's fairly upsetting, actually.
It is, yeah. The reason the national and regional data is not there is because it's not been published yet. And I think that is something we would like the panel to consider as to whether this is an appropriate time for the virtual report, because some of the national and comparative data is not published until March, and whether moving forward it would be better to have this paper presented once we have got those national and regional comparators, because that's also the same with the inclusion. Obviously the attendance data hasn't been published as well. I think we've had to discount 2021 because they were teacher assessments, as mentioned before, but I do acknowledge that it is still a significant dip. I think one of the factors is around the fluctuations in hours is on a very small cohort, so a small number of children. And if you see the earlier characteristics, we have significantly more young people in special schools for this year's cohort. And young people in special schools generally, because of the EHC plan, may not be accessing GCSE pathways of study and are more likely to be looking at entry-level skills. So I think I'm not making excuses, there has been a dip, but we have to acknowledge, one, the data is not there for the comparators, and two, we have a very different cohort this year with fewer children in mainstream schools.
Thanks, Sarah. I've asked Chiara if she could look at changing the date of the meetings. It would be good to have all the facts when we require them. No further questions or no? Great. So I move that we receive the report and that we are satisfied with the assurance provided that the virtual school continues to promote improving educational outcomes for children and young people as outlined in the Lincolnshire Looked After Children and Care Leavers strategy. Can I ask you to raise your hands if you're in agreement, please? And abstention? And obviously nobody against, there's nobody left. Right, thank you very much once again. So, we now move on to item 7, Lincolnshire Leaving Care 6 monthly update report. This item on pages 93 to 102 of the pack provides the panel with a 6 monthly update from Bernardo's on behalf of the Lincolnshire Care Leaving Services. This report will be presented by Lisa Adams, Service Manager at Bernardo's. The panel is invited to consider, review and comment on the detail provided in the report and that the report be accepted as an accurate overview of the Leaving Care Service. So that's over to you. Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you, Councillor Rowe. 6-month report just to provide a bit of information in relation to the work that's been undertaken by Lincolnshire Leaving Care Service. I've provided information initially about some of the accommodation offers that we have. We work very closely with the corporate parenting manager because we have a number of our young people accessing all different types of accommodation. The one that we're specifically delivering is around supported lodging scheme, which, if I explained before, is where members of the public really rent a room to one of our care leavers, but provide some additional support and guidance around that. A very small team for the number of placements that we actually have. We have 2 members of staff who support 18 carers at the moment. The way that we tend to work is that although we don't provide a service over the weekend, we do literally provide 24-hour support for these carers. They're on the phone first thing in the morning, and if a placement is looking like it needs some additional support, we absolutely provide that with the specialist supported lodgings workers and the leaving care workers as well. We've had some really good outcomes from that scheme. Some young people who've transitioned out of very expensive placements, sort of prior to them reaching 18, who've done really well with in a family home, basically, because that's what it is. As mentioned before by colleagues from our contract sort of team, we've contributed to the funding bid about the Staying Close and Staying Connected bid, where we'd like to maybe introduce some new workers who can really help I guess either bring back Lincolnshire young people into the county or make sure that they get the same leaving care support and offer dependent on where they're living, and that they, I guess, move away from requiring the support of the local authority to establishing their own networks of support. So that's very much around what that bid's about, and like I said, we have contributed to that. I've provided figures in relation to employment, education and training. I know that it's an area that councillors and committee members are very rightly want to scrutinise, and that's absolutely right. Again, we have a small team who work alongside the leaving care workers really to try and work with young people to make sure that they do have an offer in relation to education, employment and training. What I would say is to remind councillors, I guess, about the cohort of young people that we do work with. It's not like working with a young person who you live next door to. Some of our young people have had such traumatic events in their life. Their resilience is very different. And so, therefore, it is very difficult for some of them to either seek employment or training or maintain that. But we do try and deliver an offer what a family would offer. So, you know, if it is about a phone call in the morning to say, are you up and are you going to work? We try and deliver that. But clearly our cohort is 470 young people. So we do try and target where required, really. Our aspirations remain high, you know, but what we recognise is that that may not be delivered in a GCSE result. That may be delivered in a different way. That may be about a young person attending a training course. It may be about them doing some volunteering. So there's a whole spectrum of young people that we work with, and we continue to remain aspirational for all of that cohort, really. As mentioned earlier, and again, the corporate parenting manager may be able to add to this, but just about the increase in our unaccompanied asylum-seeking young people, you'll see from the figures that I've sort of put forward, you know, it's nearly a 40% increase in that cohort in a 12-month period, which is massive. And certainly when I look at allocations coming through now, the majority of allocations that are coming from the local authority are in relation to that unaccompanied asylum-seeking group. We have added some additional posts, which has been great, to be able to deal with that increase in numbers. So it's not something that, you know, the local authority are very mindful of that. So we have been able to do that. But it's just, I guess, yeah, just to remind members, I guess, about that increase in numbers, because it is very big. I've tried to detail some achievements that we've had in service over that 6-month period. You know, so some great achievements for Lincolnshire young people. They've been able to contribute to the new care bill. They have done that. We've had some achievements in relation to young people achieving like boxing medals and things like that. So we're really trying to get out there nationally and try and get Lincolnshire young people's sort of voices heard, really. I know that this report only covers up to September, but I always like to sort of say Christmas and New Year I can't tell you how much was done for Lincolnshire young people. It was wonderful, you know. The work that we managed to do, the partnership that I've been able to establish with Tesco's has meant that all of our young people have received hampers, additional food. All of our young people who are parents have had additional presents to give to their children. You know, it was wonderful to see. Out of the 5 years that I've done in Lincolnshire, by far the best year in relation to absolutely getting out there and reaching our young people, really. I put the link in the report to the film project that's been finished over this sort of 6-month period. So it's a film that Lincolnshire young people contributed to, and some of our members of staff, which is all about transition. It's about moving on from working with a social worker to working with a leaving care worker. So I'm sure as part of this you've been able to have a look at that. So that feels very positive. And from a staffing point of view, we've continued to run what we call service development groups, where we're trying to think about what the offer is that we make and what we need to develop in service. And that's very much a sort of bottom-up sort of process, really, where we have administrators, leaving care workers, team managers, working together to try and develop what the service should look like. We do meet regularly with our commissioners, so we're meeting with the head of regulated service and the corporate parenting manager, and we do very closely monitor staff turnover. It's the one thing that's very difficult in our service. I've got to say I was heartened by the virtual school who were saying, you know, they've been able to maintain. We have a continual move of leaving care workers. They come into Bernardo's, they do exceptionally well, they do a great induction, they contribute to service, and then they generally move to the local authority. So Lincolnshire aren't losing out. I'm not saying that. They are absolutely benefiting from I guess the members of staff that come over from leaving care. So we are continually advertising. I'm sure you'll see that. You'll see it on the corporate parenting manager is very good at sort of making sure it goes on the Lincolnshire website as well. But you'll see that all the time. You'll see adverts all the time, because that's the throughput that we have. We do have a very stable management team, but it's the leaving care workers that we've seen that throughput with, really. So that was it, really, in relation to the 6 months. Like I said, but if there's any questions, I'm more than happy to try and answer.
Okay, thank you very much. Do we have any questions? Councillor Matthews.
So I thought I jabbed it. Short-term memory loss. Section 2, accessing and maintaining appropriate education, employment and training opportunities, 67%, which is disappointing. But unlike the corporate parenting, you've only got 3.8 staff to deal with that. I'm much more interested in the figures. You've got a cohort of 470 people. You're behind me, aren't you? I'm ever so sorry. And in the table, it says December 2021, number of unencumbered sites open to service was 70. June 2022, 96. December 2022 was 104. Is that 70 plus 96 plus 104? In which case, you know, you're up to 50% of your cohort. Is there an annual rollover of 470, or is that everybody within that age range that falls under the care gap? So are you writing these questions down? And then secondly, you've explored with your team the reasons why care leavers are finding it difficult to access education, but I can't immediately find the answer. So we know you've explored it, we know you know the answer, but I can't find it in the report. So I wonder if you could give me a little return on that, please.
So, yeah,
Colin,
little bit
if
of
I
that.
might, would you like him just to give you the questions one at a time? You
No,
got
it's
them,
fine.
did you?
No, it's fine.
That's
So a
great,
little
thank
bit
you.
about the, it's fine. But if I don't answer, by all means, ask again. So a little bit about the figures. Those figures are not in addition to, they are part of the cohort. So at the moment, in December 22, we had 104 out of approximately, I would say at that stage, 460 young people who are unaccompanied asylum seekers. So it's absolutely, like I said, moving up. So that's it in relation to the figures. In relation to the education, employment and training, Lincolnshire actually, from a statistical comparable nature, actually do better than other local authorities that are surrounding them, but that doesn't mean that we should take our eye off that figure. I know that the corporate parenting manager and myself really came and delivered a paper which sort of had a look at this cohort of young people and really tried to dig underneath the figures. We came and did a sort of a meeting around that and a workshop around that really. There isn't an answer. There isn't an answer, but there is. It is about just continuing to have a focus. You know, the virtual school now have a focus, have extended their focus and are happy to help work with us and try and look at that particular cohort, which is great. We do try and target young people. So one of our service development groups absolutely target this group who are not in education, employment and training, and try and look at if it's around a gap in mental health services. We did a specific piece of work where we had an assistant director from Bernardo's come in and look again at that cohort individually and try and understand the rationale why young people weren't accessing that. And we have developed posts around that. So you've seen like the post of the wellbeing worker who again works with those young people. Myself and the corporate parenting manager often quote colleagues from who we had from the job centre who were basically saying it's not about sometimes making young people work ready. It's actually making them ready to actually go and actually step foot over the door. And we do have some young people who are like that, are, you know, some young people who will not engage, who we are continuing to try and engage in services, who of course, within that cohort will also be young people who are, some who are pregnant, but that's a fairly low number, some who are in prison, again, a fairly low number, but they all form part of that cohort. So they are an absolute priority for our service, but there isn't a sort of a carte blanche, one rule fits all that's going to make those figures look higher, I'm afraid.
Does that cover everything, Colin?
Well, it does, and I'm absolutely not questioning that you're not working on it. But in your oral answer there, you have given specific reasons. You said some might be pregnant, some might be in prison. We're talking about 120 young people here. And I just think it's to say, since you've done the research work on it, what you've said is there isn't a simple answer, but there are multiple answers. And I'd just be really intrigued to know what they are and then find out which ones of those we can tick off. Because clearly if someone is in prison, they should still be engaged in education. Of course, the prison should be making educational provision. If someone's pregnant, as far as I'm aware, it doesn't stop you attending education. And it might give you a very valid reason for why you would want to gain better qualifications, because you've got, a family that you're going to have to look after and care and nurture. So I just would like to know the detail of this so that we can help you address it.
So just to come back to that, I think we're at that stage where we've done that narrative work. Some of those policy areas are interesting. So, for example, if a young person is custody, it depends if they're on full sentence or if they're on remand. If they're on remand, they can't do education, employment and training. Actually, if a young care experience person is either a father or a mother, we'd actually be trying to support them to do that parenting role, because often that's quite difficult within its own right without then trying to put education, employment and training on top of that. So I think there is some individual cases, but we have just done what we call a theory of change, which is working through all of that, and the big areas that come out are kind of that well-being, low kind of depression, anxiety and ability to get to work, plus disability and the SEND, and actually some of those young people around abilities to write, abilities to actually the neurodiversity within that group. So some of the work we are doing now is looking at, we've got the wellbeing worker, we've got the mental health worker, but where is that disability lens to our education and employment team, which, as you said, is fairly small for 470 young people that are spread out across the country. So yeah, that's the work that we're doing next. But we could definitely give maybe a bit more in-depth paper on what that theory of change has come out and what outcomes we're trying to work on.
I think it was a slip of the tongue. You said across the country. Did you mean across the county?
No, across the country, because wherever our young people go, we follow. So we've got 5 young people in London, 4 young people in Wales, 2 young people in Southampton, 1 young person in Scotland. So we're not just working with young people in Lincolnshire, we're working across multi-local authorities, multi-job centres, multi-work. So we're travelling to see our young people distance on some occasions.
Does that breakdown appear in the report, Chair? Does that breakdown of location appear in the report?
I can't. I think I've seen that, yes, but it might not have been here.
Detail of where our young people live.
Yeah.
That's not in this report, is it? But we can put that in following reports if that would be helpful.
Thank you, Councillor Kelly.
Thank you, thank you, Councillor Rowe. I agree with Councillor Matthews that I think this is really important, and I think obviously the work that you're doing it is good because you have now identified broad categories. Obviously, it's really going to affect these young people's life chances, isn't it? And that's why I think we have to devote lots of resources to it. What I wondered is there any gender implications to this? You identified, people who, girls who were pregnant, people in prison. I just wondered, if there was a gender issue as well. The normal ways that sociologically you identify things. Does that come into it?
No, it doesn't. It doesn't.
Right, sorry, I'm messing around with my microphone. Okay then, I find that, so really that makes your job very, very difficult, doesn't it?
Okay, thank you. I've no questions. You often see on the television when businesses are mentioned, they go, oh, and other supermarkets exist, but in this case they don't, and I just thought it was important to highlight the name Tesco's by the sounds of it, who have been wonderfully supportive. So that was really the only comment from that point of view. So thank you both very much. I think Tara, hello.
Thank you, Chairman. Just wanted to come back to Councillor Kelly's point there. Through the introduction of the Value in Care Toolkit, we started to pull out some insights, which also includes about educational achievement and also around gender and at different stages and ages, how that might differ from a male to a female. We're really in the early stages, but it's certainly something that will naturally expand to our our care leavers cohort. So that's kind of will be work in progress.
Thank you. I move that we receive the report and accept this as an accurate overview of the leaving care service for the period of concern. I also ask that our comments from the discussions as recorded are taken under consideration by officers alongside with our thanks to our Barnardo's partners who continue to deliver a valued and excellent quality of service to our young people. So thank you very much for the presentation. Could you raise your hands if you're in agreement, please? That's great. Thank you very much. And thank you once again. So we move on to item 8, Children in Care Performance Report, Quarter 2. This item on pages 103 to 128 of the pack invites the panel to consider key performance information for Quarter 2 2022-23 that is relevant to the work of the panel. This report will be presented by Tara Jones, Assistant Director, Children's Safeguarding. The panel is invited to review and comment on the performance achieved in the Quarter 2. Over to you again, Tara.
Thank you. So this item invites the panel to consider and comment upon the key performance information for Quarter 2 of 22-23. I am delighted to see that all the performance measures have improved since Quarter 1. So even those that have fallen out and did not exceed their target have improved. So there are 16 measures in total that reported on in Quarter 2. And of these, 5 did not meet their target and 4 exceeded their targets. So I'll start with the ones that did not meet their target. So the first one is the average time between a child entering care and moving in with its adoptive family. And that's 497 days. What I need to explain about that target, it's got a 3-year rolling average. So actually what we've found now is it's taken in the years of the pandemic and the lockdown and the restrictions. And you'll know from previous reports, there was delay in respect of the court process, and we are recovering well from that now, and our care proceedings are coming down and more in line with the 26-week expectation. So real progress now as we've gone into recovery from the pandemic. So that one issue is really impacting on this performance. However, our adoption service is strong and this measure is better than the regional and statistical neighbours. So moving on to the next target, which is children's participation in their children in care reviews. That's looking at 94.6. What we did find is there were some new starters to the independent reviewing service, and there were some recording issues of children's participation. They've now been rectified, and I'm delighted to say that the figure as of today is 98.5 children in care participated within their reviews. The next measure is children in care that have had their health assessment, health checks. That is an improving picture. You will know from previous reports that there are a number of 16 and 17-year-old young people who completely refuse to engage within their health assessment. That's despite encouragement and support, finding alternative ways in which they can engage in their assessment. We will always have some of those refusers, but it doesn't stop us from trying to engage with them. I am confident that that figure will improve. You find towards the end of the year, when there's updates on Mosaic, that kind of always comes on target or within the tolerance. So I'm not worried about that figure at all. Interestingly, there's been a huge piece of work around our initial health assessments, which is the health assessment that new starters, new children in care will engage in. And Laura Bonner, one of our heads of service, has been integral in terms of getting health colleagues to support initial health assessments. And Laura is with us today observing, and I think it's at, is it at 80 initial health assessments? 80%. That's the highest it has ever been, and I'm sure we're going to be the envy of some local authorities. So a great thank you to Laura for that piece of work. Going on to the next measure, these are health measures. So the next one is dental checks. As you all know, NHS dentistry is a national issue, and us being able to secure dentists for children in care. This measure has improved from Q1, and we are anticipating it will improve later on this year. The NHS has introduced a new scheme for recruiting more NHS dentists, and we're hoping to have more news on the recruitment of those around Lincolnshire, so that will be an improving picture, not only for children in care, but I think for the community as well. The next one is around our immunisations of children in care. Public Health are now up to date with their child immunisation programme following the pandemic. What information is recorded on System 1, which is the health system for recording children's immunisations, they are reporting much higher measures than ourselves, and that is purely a recording issue. So I've asked for a piece of work to be completed to rectify Mosaic, which is our children's record in social care, so that all of those immunisations are recorded and up to date. So again, that measure is a real improving picture. So I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Tara. Yes, Councillor Kelly.
I can really relate to the problems with finding a national health dentist. You can see my tooth, my dental practice, they retired, and it's just been a nightmare. My question isn't really about that. It's, do the young people give any reasons why they don't want to go? I mean, I can understand why they don't want to go to the dentist, because I don't particularly want to go, but why they don't want, to have routine appointments. Because that seems really strange to me. But do they actually give any reasons why they won't? They just refuse.
Yeah, I mean, there's a variety of reasons. I mean, some 16 and 17-year-olds feel that they can engage and go to the GP themselves. Why do we need to go through this formal process of a health assessment? So some young people want to manage their own health needs. But again, it doesn't support us. If they do have an issue, we'll absolutely support them. Their carers will, their leaving care workers. I don't think it's so much a refusal for dental. It's more around the health assessments.
So basically, if what they want is independence, then to be able to go to the appointment by themselves. So are they allowed to do that then?
Yes.
Presumably, yes.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So actually, the figure is better. It's just that you can't monitor it because they're doing it by themselves.
Yes.
Right, I get that. I think that's quite important, actually. Thank you.
Councillor Matthews.
I'd like to congratulate you, and indeed the virtual school. 16 to 7-year-old children in care who are participating in learning. The performance is currently showing as better than exceeding the Q2 target, and at 73.3% is showing an improvement on Q2 last year of 51.3%. Music to my heart. Well done. Get these young people into education. And it's a request to you, Chair, that my second one is, please can you cull out the information about dentistry and provide it to Carl Macy, Chair of Scrutiny, because we had a session on East Midlands Commission of Dentistry, but it's these are our in-care children, so he will be pleased to receive that information. Thank you very much.
Yeah, great. Carol's got it. Leo.
I don't know if I just heard you wrong, but in your first, talking about the first thing, where it's you've got 497 days, but the target's actually 450 days. It's the first. I've got it up here and I can't read it because apparently I now need glasses.
The adoption target.
Average time. Yes,
Yeah.
that's it. Thank you. I thought you said that it was supposed to be 26 weeks. And I was just wondering, if your target's 450 days, that's obviously not 26 weeks. And if your target is actually 26 weeks, or that's how it should be, I know it's going to look worse, but surely that we should have a more realistic, if we're supposed to be hitting the 26 weeks, that should be our target, not 450 days. That's my question, basically.
Yes, sorry, they're two different elements. Yes, so the 26 weeks is the public law outline. That states that we should all courts, and that's in the country, should be trying to conclude children's care proceedings within 26 weeks. So at the end of the 26 weeks, we, for children who have a plan for adoption, we would then apply for a placement order. And then if you look at our other adoption measure on this, which is getting court order to place a child for adoption and then placement with their adoptive parents, we are one of the best local authorities, top performing local authorities in the country. So those two measures really need to be read together to understand the journey of the child.
Sorry, I heard that I did basically look the wrong end of the stick, so that's fine.
No, it's a good question because it can be a complicated measure.
Okay, thank you. No further questions, I'm assuming? Good. I move that we receive the report and are satisfied with the performance achieved and assurances where measures did not meet their targets. I also ask that our comments from the discussions as recorded are taken under consideration by the relevant officers. Can I ask you to raise your hands if you're in agreement, please? Yep, that's great. Thank you very much. So we now move on to item... Oh, thank you, Tara. We now move on to item 9, Children in Care Annual Health Report. This report can be found on pages 129 to 176 of the agenda pack and invites the panel to consider the Children in Care Annual Health Report 2021-22. This report will be presented by Rachel Freeman, Head of Service, Children in Care and Residential Estates, Elizabeth Bunny, Healthcare Coordinator, Lincolnshire Community Health Services, NHS Trust, and Nicola's not with us, as you know. The panel is invited to consider and comment on the detailed information contained in the report and contents, and endorse the report, and where appropriate recommend any actions or changes to the executive portfolio holder and leading officers. So over to you both, please.
Thank you very much. So this report incorporates information from 2021 to 2022, and it was written by myself, Liz and Nicola, who sends her apologies today. Nicola's from the ICB. However, it contains information and data that comes from a number of different officers and our partner agencies. So you'll see it's a wide range of information contained within the report. But in summary, it talks through our responsibilities as corporate parents towards children in care and what that entails and how we seek to meet those. The data within it talks about the key performance indicators that we measure ourselves on and against nationally and our statistical neighbours in terms of how we're performing to meet the health needs of children in care. You'll see Tara's already alluded to and given you some updates in terms of the improving picture. In 21 to 22, we were still seeing quite a bit of impact from COVID and working through that, particularly in relation to immunisations, dental appointments, etc. But as you've already heard, that had begun to already improve in 21-22 and has continued to go from strength to strength. The report also highlights the strengths in Lincolnshire in that we have strong strong partnership working relationships across the board with the ICB, the NHS, other voluntary agencies who all come together to support children in care. It talks about the transformation work in terms of us working really hard to reduce the number of children in care, which nationally has been on the rise the past few years, and we've seen that in Lincolnshire, although not to the certain extent as the rest of the country, we're still below that level. The transformation programme has done lots of work in terms of bringing children who are out of county, which makes it more difficult for us to ensure their health and welfare needs are met, because we're dealing with different GP surgeries, different NHS departments, CAMS, etc. So by bringing them in, that enables us to get better outcomes for them in all aspects of their care, including education and health. So the report talks about some of that, and also our recruitment challenges that we saw during the pandemic in terms of our fostering. A lot of people re-evaluated their circumstances, and we saw a decline in our number of fostering households in Lincolnshire. So lots of work went in 21-22 and continues in terms of our recruitment strategies for recruiting and retaining foster carers to maintain our children within foster placements within Lincolnshire. We started to see some success in that in 21-22, and that has continued to grow. The report also references our family finding and matching events, which at this point in time were virtual but are now in person and are proving very successful. We just had another one this week, which has resulted in quite a lot of interest for some of our children who are waiting for permanent foster homes. We've also developed that in terms of we're now having people at the events who are not yet approved as foster carers, but they are in that process, and that is just enabling them to have an understanding of the children and their needs, and potentially express interest in children that they might wish to be linked with on their approval. So that we're finding that is a really effective way in terms of getting buy-in from carers and helping them to understand what fostering entails from that kind of as they go through that assessment process. The health data is contained within it and self-explanatory, and Tara's just given you an update that is more recent than this. But in conclusion of the report, we had seen an increase in the number of children in care. However, we'd been invested heavily in a lot of preventative services to reduce the numbers of children coming into the care system, and that was being very effective and has continued to go from strength to strength. There is a strong commitment from all partner agencies in terms of helping to meet the health and welfare needs of children in our care, and that continues, and we continue to build on that. And as we invest in our training of staff and across all partner agencies in terms of trauma-informed practice to help us to better understand the health and welfare needs of children in care and design services that are going to improve their outcomes. I don't know if there's anything you wanted to add, Liz, to that, or anything I've missed off.
Just to say that this report, the data within this report, sort of ended in March last year, so it's quite a long way back, and I think the health aspects have been well covered by Tara in answering. I mean, the figures, current figures, are better again than those that are in the report or in the Q2 report, and as we were saying, the improvement in the timeliness and quality of the initial health assessments has really improved greatly over the last 2 years, but certainly the last 12 months. So we are, say, 80% are being seen within the time period, which is a huge improvement on about 4% we had years ago. And just to put it in context, some of our local neighbours, so Nottinghamshire, Leicestershire, etc., are really struggling, and our children that we place out into those counties for whatever reason, either to family or special provision, when we're requesting initial health assessments for them, they're coming back with dates 3 and 4 months ahead. So, you know, that makes us feel that we are doing a good job. I mean, it's not without its challenges. And again, those young people that come into care at 16 and 17, often those that come in at that age, as my social care colleagues far too well aware, have often led quite chaotic lives before they've come into care. So actually, you know, conforming to and going to appointments they don't actually want to go to, don't see the point in. You know, it's you you can only you can do your best with that, and we will flex to that. But those that don't achieve the the sort of 20% that aren't being achieved, the majority are those young people who for they can do it. They vote with their feet, but we don't drop them. We keep going. We keep trying to see them. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Do we have any questions? Councillor Matthews.
Thank you for the good report. I'm particularly interested in CAMS, the mental health service, and indeed some extensions of that. But I don't understand the tables that you've put in here about behavioural problems form 39.39%. Is that of the cohort of the referrals, of which there were 175 from what I can see? I just wonder if you could talk me through that table. Because these look like quite large figures, which of course makes perfect sense based on the information we've been receiving from the care leavers, from the children in care, that mental health issues are a significant factor amongst looked after children. And then, there's, as I say, there is a very helpful breakdown here. Low mood, 16.5%, but 5% of these referrals, suicide risk with harm. So just if you could talk me through some of these, not so much in the sense that they're recorded, but in terms of the characteristics of the health situation, mental health situation within the adopted children cohort. And then using your expertise, I'll be pleased if you could extrapolate that into the wider sector that we've been talking about today, because it does appear to be a major factor in why young people aren't engaging in education, who won't see the house, won't be in secure accommodation, all sorts of things.
This part of the report is actually provided by our CAMS colleagues. It's not detailed by Rachel or myself. So we would need to refer to them for a greater explanation. I don't think I could. I think it's the percentages are out of the number of referrals to CAMS for children and young people in care. But I say it's not my data. I wouldn't wish to say anything further about it, I'm afraid. But we can speak to our colleagues in CAMS and ask them, if you wanted to have a further explanation.
Just Chair,
just Tara might just want to come back on that. Thank you.
Would it be helpful if we timetable a report specifically around emotional well-being and mental health of our children and young people to corporate parenting panel? Charlotte Gray from our commissioning service actually, she leads the work in this area, and because it really is an issue that's kind of coming through on nearly every report that has been brought before you today, and it is a national issue. It's been recognised within the care review as well, and I think it would be really beneficial to bring an in-depth report here, Chairman.
Yes, please. I think that would make a lot of sense. Yeah.
Thank you, because that's where I was going, that I think we need to put a bit of a spotlight on this. It's the elephant in the room. There are all sorts of reasons, but this is very carefully broken down by professionals who are saying their behavioural problems. But interestingly, Councillor Killy asked about the male-female split earlier, the gender split, and 14 females aged 4 to 9, 42 females aged 10 to 14, 38 females aged 15 to 19. Those are the biggest numbers on this table of referees. And then there's really interesting the males 32 aged 10 to 14, 21 aged 15 to 19. These are big figures for quite a small cohort in a well-maintained and looked after cohort. And I wonder if we extrapolate from that there's an issue here that we need more information on, which Tara's very kindly offered to provide. Thank you.
Rachel.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. I agree with Tara that a distinct report on this issue would be really helpful, because there has been, and I think it is mentioned in the report, about the complex high needs health team that were just sort of becoming on board at this time, and that has moved forward. So there's lots of work that's gone in. I think it'd be really helpful to have that as a distinct agenda item to fully explore and get that more of the detail behind some of those numbers from those you know, those in the actual service and those commissioning it. I think that would be really helpful.
Good, thank you. Yes, Kerry.
It's just to say as well, for that to go all the way through to care experience, because we've got a specialist mental health worker with our team, and I think you'll see that the difference of the diagnosis coming later, etc., would be helpful to do it all the way through in one paper.
Yeah, sounds good, thank you. Oh, sorry, Councillor Kelly. You're fine now. Claire, you're fine. So that's great, thank you. I move that we receive the report and accept it as an accurate record of activity in line with the DOH statutory guidance on promoting the health and well-being of looked after children, and that we endorse the recommendations as these are set out on page 170 of the agenda pack, and that we also have this additional report back at a future date. If you're in agreement, could you raise your hands, please? Yeah, that's great. Thank you very much. And thank you very much for the report. So we now move on to 10, which is the Corporate Parenting Panel Work Programme. This item on page 177 to 180 of the agenda pack enables the panel to comment on the content of his own work programme. The report will be presented by Chiara, Scrutiny Officer. The Corporate Parenting Panel is asked to agree the work programme and identify any items for future meetings, and obviously we need to look at the couple of things that we've raised today. Thank you, Chiara.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. This item enables the panel to consider and comment on the contents of its own work programme for the coming year, as to ensure that scrutiny activity is focused where it can be of the greatest benefit. If we cast our eyes over the next meeting, on page 178, in the next meeting, which is on the 9th of March 2023, we're anticipating reports around children in care, engagement and education, and the impact of the Department for Education Post-16 pilot. We're expecting Voices for Choices, the annual update report, children in care performance measures for Q3, fostering quarterly performance report for Q3. We are also anticipating the criminal activity outcomes and pathways for children in care, which was a report that was rolled from this meeting to the next one in March. The rest of the work programme can be found on the next few pages, and this is going to be growing and developing as weeks are passing and as we add more meetings to the calendar of our panel's meetings. Thank you.
Do we have any questions or comments? No. So I move that we note the report and approve the existing work programme as detailed in 177 to 180 of the agenda pack and added items from today's meeting. Could you raise your hand if you're in agreement, please? Great, that is unanimous. So we now move on to item 11, which is exempt information. So I propose, in accordance with the section 100A(4) of the Local Government Act 1972, the following agenda item has not been circulated to the press and public on the grounds that it is considered to contain exempt information as defined in paragraph 3 of Part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972 as amended. The press and public may be excluded from the meeting for the consideration of this item of business. We will now, we'll now take a short break to end the live streaming. Oh, yes, before we get there, yes. So could we have a seconder on the proposal? Thank you, Councillor Keeley, and all those in favour. Councillor Matthews, are you? Yes, in favour. So that was, unanimous. So we'll now take a short break while they end the live streaming. So if everyone wants to take 5 minutes, get a cup of coffee, and come back.